guys, it's Megan Campbell, and I still have shit to say. So if you're listening, stay tuned. Today we're going to talk about feedback, giving it, accepting it, and figuring out which feedback you should actually give a fuck about. So, yeah.
So what brought this up?
Life be lifin', right?
Okay,
so as a group practice owner, I have lots of employees, but also as a person, I have a tight-knit group of friends. And I think feedback I'm always thinking about, right? What feedback do I care about? What feedback, right? The self-awareness journey. We talked about how you pick a good therapist, but part of being self-aware is also like reflection, personal reflection on your own. It doesn't necessarily always have to be with a therapist, right? And so kind of, right? Iron sharpens iron.
True.
So
Do you feel, when you texted me this the other day, do you feel that this comes from a place of
rage? It could come from most things I text you about come from a place of rage, but
that's good. And good to have that context now. But like being a creative, like you're always getting feedback. Like I've been getting feedback, over my drawings, over whatever I do since I was a kid, whether it's good or bad and how you take it.
I think regardless of creative or not, we all as humans get feedback all the time, right?
Sure.
Like feedback comes you can walk down the street and people can give you a nasty look and you can either take it personally or be like, oh, maybe they smelled something, right? Like we can get feedback in so many different ways, right? Like feedback doesn't necessarily always have to be verbal or communicated.
True.
I mean, so even recently, like I gave feedback to an employee and the response that I got was avoidance, right? That's feedback, right? The response was nothing. And that is also feedback, right? And so then I get to choose what I'm going to reflect on and what I'm not going to reflect on. And if I was a people pleaser or if I really cared about that would be a thing that I would want to address or how I address it or what I address. And is it, do they need space or is it that they have nothing to say to me anymore, right? So I think in general, I've been thinking about feedback as an overarching topic. For sure, creatives have so much feedback.
I was just thinking as in like we've had to deal, like we actually have to deal with the feedback when we're.
Do we?
Well, I mean.
Do we? Deal with it, yes, but like sometimes dealing with it is that we just think, oh, that sounds like it's a personal opinion.
Well, yeah.
Like your opinion of what I'm making is none of my business.
Like, I guess we're not dealing with, like, it's been a part of our life.
Yeah, that's true. But I think then I would say, and maybe this is like a gender thing.
And just realizing it, I guess.
I would say like women live in a world where they're getting feedback all the time.
You know what? And this is true.
Not to put that out there. I'm not saying that men don't get feedback.
As an elder white male, yeah, I'm probably not getting as much feedback as a woman. So
I mean, maybe not, right? I think it is really interesting, and even feedback in the context of being a therapist versus being an art therapist, right? So kind of even piggybacking on what we were talking about in our last episode of like how you're see the right therapist or have a good fit. If you can't give your therapist feedback on what's going well, what's not going well, what you need more of, what you need less of, they are not the therapist for you. So I also think as a professional, I'm thinking that, right? As an employer, I'm thinking that is like, how do I make it safe for people to give me feedback in the spaces that I want feedback, right? Even in my marriage, like I would like my husband to be able to give me feedback, right? Mm-hmm. Some days I'm not down for it. So I'm like, no, thank you, sir. But, right, like there is the pieces of like in different ships, friendships, relationships, therapeutic relationships, marriages, partnerships, all the ships that we have, creative co-creation, right, with this podcast, there has to be feedback. Like there has to be space, even when you and I are talking. Like if you're like, oh, that fucking sucked, like I need to know that. Or like, oh, nobody wants to hear that shit, Megan. Like if I'm sending you a text message about spitballing an idea, I need to know and trust that like as we're co-creating something that can be like, oh yeah, that resonates, or this, or are we covering that, or no, don't go down there, that's wild, don't say that shit.
Right. If I'm not willing to give that feedback or afraid to, then we're both wasting our time, right? Like there's a component of that.
And I would say like that hits the nail on the head of why I texted you, right? Is like I was coming up against multiple people that I was attempting to give feedback to, thinking our ship was in a place it could hold, and realizing, oh fuck, like you can't listen to this, you can't hear this, like, and so is it even? So then I have to think, is it mine to give? Right. Does it matter? Right? Like, and I think that's like a conversation I've been having with people that can hold space for, like, I have a friend, Carissa, which actually I should have her on the podcast at some point. She can give me feedback, and it doesn't always feel good, right? Feedback can feel shitty. Like, it can feel real shitty. Like, she can say shit to me, and I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna sit with that for a second because that feels like hot garbage.
Well,
and she's often not wrong about it, right?
Well, yeah, it could cut pretty deep, and it could feel very personal, but
I think the feedback that matters usually does.
yes.
If you're not a people pleaser. If you're a people pleaser, everything cuts close. Everything feels personal. But then is it personal, or is it only personal to the person you've made yourself be for that? So I think that also matters, is like, are you in the spaces and places that resonate with who you are as a person? Or have you created an identity to make yourself feel safe in spaces that you really shouldn't be, right? Like, I love the metaphor of Julia Roberts and The Runaway Bride. Have you ever seen this movie?
Many years ago, probably.
Okay, it's definitely an old school chick flick. But she, with every marriage, changes how she orders her eggs, and she only orders her eggs like her man orders the eggs, right?
Okay.
So if people are coming and being like, oh, this is what I know Megan like responds well to, and I'm just gonna do what she wants me to do, that's gross, right? Like, because it's not genuine.
No.
And so then feedback doesn't really matter. Like, it comes to the point where, right, like, kind of getting back to that topic of feedback of like, the more feedback I give you, the more I just create this scenario where you're either just doing what I'm telling you to do. And feedback shouldn't be that, right? Feedback shouldn't be, do this, don't do that, even though it often is, right? I think the best feedback that I've ever experienced has been questions.
Yes.
Like, you know, this is what came up for me when this occurred. Tell me about that for you, right? Like, it's been again, that co-created conversation, as opposed to, fuck you, don't do this again, don't do that again. You know, there's like things as employers where I'm like, you got to hit this deadline. What's the deal? Like, and we have this conversation, and then like, oh, you still didn't hit the deadline. Now it's not a conversation. Like, get your shit done. Like, right. Like,
well, the command feedback is one-sided. It's you giving a command. The inclusive feedback is you're including them as a part of the conversation as well. And yeah, I've dealt with that when working with teams, and it's hard to meet them in that place, especially if, like you said, meeting deadlines and stuff like that. Like, it's like, hey, but I felt that the most well-received feedback is like, hey, I have some critiques on this, but what are some of the things that you think you could maybe do better on this piece? And then we kind of go through it, and then they see it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And letting them come to that realization.
I mean, because again, like you said, we've all been receiving criticism our whole life. And also, feedback doesn't need to be criticism.
No. It can just be. It doesn't have to be good or bad.
Right. And I think that's the other part, is like, if I'm getting feedbacks, and I want to clarify, of like, getting feedback and receiving feedback feel like two very different things for me. So if I'm getting feedback, I had no choice about whether I'm getting it or not. And then on the back end, I get to decide if I was listening to it or not.
Okay.
If I'm receiving feedback, it means there's been a space. I'm taking it in, like I'm receiving it, right? Like the package is being delivered and I'm opening it. Right? If somebody's just shoving it down my throat, that's a very different situation. Okay. So I think getting and receiving feedback are two different things.
I like that you've pointed that out.
And I also have to work on myself. If I am in a place where I feel like I'm always getting feedback and I'm never receiving feedback, then what am I doing? Like, it's a co-created thing, right? So in whatever ship I'm in, friendship, therapeutic, whatever, right, is like, what am I doing to be able to receive? Because it is a privilege to give people feedback, right? It's a privilege to share your opinion. It is a privilege, right? It's a very much a power dynamic of like, my opinion matters. I'm the fucking shit. I'm going to tell you what the fuck I think about that. Let me like give it to you, right? But to receive it is hard. It sucks.
Yeah, that is, wow, that I've never actually thought about it that way, but it being a privilege to give and receive feedback.
I mean, yes, but receiving is often harder than giving, right? So I even think, like, pure and simple, like, think about, like, gift giving, right? Like, when we're kids, we love giving, like, getting gifts, right? Sure. But like, I think as adults, we start to be like, oh, I love finding the perfect thing, or I love like finding this thing because like seeing somebody opening it, knowing you gave the best gift,
What has
and right,
meaning?
like, yes, exactly. And oftentimes the person getting the gift, if they feel uncomfortable about getting something, or they feel like, oh, this was like so good. What I got you was like a half-ass keychain that like I got at the airport, right? Right? Like there are those pieces where it's like, oh, now I'm like kind of judging like this level. It's hard to receive and just to be like, thank you.
Right.
Right? Compliments are the same thing. And a compliment is also feedback. Right? So when somebody is giving you validation, like we're talking about criticism, but validation is the same thing too. So if you can't receive compliments, if you can't hear what a great job you're doing, or now granted, if somebody's just like, great job, amazing, good job, you're awesome, that's bullshit. But if they're like, this specific thing that you did was above and beyond, I so appreciate that, here's how it like benefited our team or our relationship or whatever was going on, like it's hard to be like, yeah, this actually happened to me yesterday. So recently I received an award, which is also hard for me to admit. And I was on a local council meeting, and they were like, we're gonna celebrate people on our council getting amazing things. And they had a list, and I was like, oh God, why am I on this list? Like, this is so uncomfortable. And I had to take a minute of like, no, I should be proud. Like, this is a thing. And also it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to have the spotlight on you. It's uncomfortable, like, for a variety of reasons. For me specifically, it's like, oh gosh, what do they want from me now that this thing, and like I like to just like pretend that I'm in secret and living my life doing my thing. But same thing, like I'm gonna put this podcast out there and there's gonna be criticism, right?
Yeah.
Like, and feedback. Like people will either resonate with what we're saying or they'll be like, fuck you, bitch, I don't care. Like this is wild. Like why? And then it's like, okay, well turn it off. I don't care, right? Like
Well, yeah.
I think it goes back to that, like, I still don't know. I need to Google it. I will put it in the show notes if I figure it out. But I love the quote of like, your opinion of me is none of my business.
Ooh.
And I think that goes to speaking on this idea of like, I really don't care about that many people's opinions of me. And the few that I do have co-created so much safety that I'm like, oh, if you're feeling a certain way about me, that hurts. Like that's a wound and we need to address this or discuss it, or I need you to move out of my circle, right? Like I need you to either move further or closer based on like safety, but then there is this piece where I'm like, the people out there, haters gonna hate, whatever. I don't fucking care, right? And that has happened recently because I've had to be confrontational with people in our community doing things outside the scope of their practice and standing up for what I do. And they do not like that feedback. Like the feedback has basically been like a professional fuck you. And I've been like, oh, cool, glad we share space in the mental health field, right? Like it's a really interesting thing to be like, oh, I poked the bear here for somebody and they didn't know how to accept that feedback. And really accepting feedback is like, yeah, let's have a conversation. Let's like talk about it. Let's, like, I didn't realize that's what we were doing, or no, I did realize it, and like, you caught me, like, boom, you caught me, and now we're gonna do something different. Like, now I know different moving forward. And people nobody wants to admit being wrong. Or they always think they're wrong and they just don't want people to know.
Oh.
I think it's one of two things, right? It's either like you don't want to admit you're wrong if you actually do hear that feedback.
True.
Well, I guess maybe three things. You don't actually think you're wrong and you don't care, and that's okay too, right? All of these are okay. There's like no shame in any of them. Or you like know you're wrong and you're not going to excuse being wrong. It's a little bit more on the narcissistic side of things, but it exists and I come across it often.
I'm sure you do.
But I think, I think we don't grow, and I should also say develop, because plants grow, people develop. So I had a professor in college that was like very clearly made the distinction. So we don't develop unless
I like that too.
We're like taking things in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know the quippy shit. That needs to go on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Plants grow, humans develop.
That's going to be a part of the I got shit to say merch.
Fair, that's true. But then I'll have to find all these people that I need to like, it'll have to be like hyphen, and then my professor's name, because I'm like, I'm not trying to steal anybody's shit. Because again, it's not mine. I'm right. Like, I'm thinking about it and applying it in different ways. But I say that as I look at like all of our plants here, and I'm like, yeah, we fucking love plants because they're simple. You water them and they grow, right? Like, but as humans, like, developing happens in very different ways, and we have to figure out like how we want to develop and why we want to develop and where we want to develop, right? There's like so many paths that we don't take. And some of that is based on the feedback we receive.
Oh, sure. And then I think when people feel stuck or they're spinning their wheels, that either they're not hearing the feedback that they're telling themselves or from the others, and like you said, they're not wait, what did you say? Not growing, developing. They're not developing. They're just kind of in a space.
Yeah, but so then there's like the devil's advocate side of things of like, what feedback do you listen to and what feedback do you not listen to, right? Which we've kind of made a nod to in this conversation. But I think like in a greater picture, there's like the difference between internal motivation and external motivation. So we talk about it in clinical kind of jargon of intrinsic versus extrinsic, but it's like the idea of like, if I care so much about what is happening in my external environment with people, with my job, with my boss, with my marriage, with this, like, yes, we have to respond to those things, but if I'm only motivated by what my response is on the outside, then I lose my sense of self, right? And so intrinsically, there has to be this space of, I know how I feel. I understand who I am as a person through whatever I've learned about myself. This resonates with me. This doesn't resonate with me, right? And like when we're younger, we go through trying all those things on. We're like, I'm a punk. I'm a preppy. I'm an athlete. I'm this. And like, we're going to have a guest on in our next podcast talking about identities, which I think kind of alludes to those pieces too, of like, what pieces are ours and what pieces is the world trying to put on us to make us fit somewhere that they think we belong, and what are we motivated by, right? So recently I've had conversations, like really hard conversations where it's like I'm allowed to be angry and you don't have to respond to my anger. You don't have to decide what you're going to do based on my anger. Like, I am a grown adult. I have resources. I go to therapy. I work on myself. Like, and anger is not bad. I'm allowed to have it.
Right.
And I understand that I'm expressing this to you. And you can handle it in whatever way you want. And I trust that you will. And I need to make space for that to happen. And that is like not an easy place to be, right? Like, that's a real, and trust me, it's probably the first time I've ever fucking been in that place in my life where I was like, oh yeah, I know who I am, right? But that takes work to know who you are and to be able to say like, this is what I bring, this is what I offer, this is who I am. And recently I've started doing, joining, they're called the Level Up Leaders. We can tag them, they're great. But they offer a lot of like social media support for group practice owners. But I think it just applies to leadership in general, not just necessarily in the mental health. And they've been talking about the idea of having invitations. Like, I invite you to this space and you get to do what you would like with that, right? Like, you can receive my invitation, you can reject my invitation, and then I'll match that energy. And maybe invitations will stop, right? And it's much deeper when they're working on it. But I like that kind of feels like a takeaway for me, is this idea of like, I can invite you to have this conversation with me. You can either join it or reject it, right? Or decide you're not ready for it in this moment. And I think we hear that a lot now in social media, where even they're talking about like partnerships or friendships where it's like maybe your partner comes home and you're like, whoa, like losing my shit. And you're like, do you need to vent or do you need solutions? Like, do you need me to hear you and validate you, or do you need me to problem solve things for you? I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10, women do not want a solution for their problem. We have already problem solved things. But right, there's often that space where if we needed solutions, we need to be able to ask for what we need. And so it's an interesting thing of like, if I offer this invitation and feedback, whether it's with an employee or a friend or my partner or however that goes, of just like, can you hear this right now?
Right.
My friend Carissa that I've alluded to earlier, I'll call her and be like, can I shout some shit to you? I got some tea. I got to shout. And she'll be like, yeah. And so she told me this great story where she had called her partner and she was like, I'm going to shout some stuff. And he was like, you got to say the line. And she was like, what? he's like, yeah, don't you have to say like, can I shout some tea at you? She's like, oh yeah, because I think I'm usually on speakerphone and he hears it. He's like, yeah, this is the shtick, right? Because there's like a space of permission.
Yeah.
Where, right, like sometimes she might be like, no, I only have 5 minutes. Or like, I also need to shout some shit. So like, you need to wrap it up quicker rather than later. Or like, I'm running into a meeting, I'll call you back in 10. Or like, yeah, go ahead. Like, right. And I think there is this piece of like permission. So that idea of an invitation is such a nice is a bad word. I hate that. We've already talked about that. But like, I think a kind and clear thing of just like, you know, how do I co-create? Like, how do I honor the relationship and make space? And there's kind of that difference of like, are we in a place where feedback exists in the relationship? And or are you having a day where you can hear it? Because sometimes we wake up on the wrong side of the bed and we're like, fuck that, no thank you.
And do you feel, so if what I'm hearing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is receiving feedback, like you got to know yourself pretty well to know which feedback to listen.
If you're receiving it, yes.
Yes. Like you have to know yourself. Because like you said, you can kind of get stuck in that feedback loop.
You can be in the loop forever and ever and ever, right? Like I have a therapist, Brittany, she's great. She's like, man, I could just loop all day and then it spirals like way far and I got to stop myself, right? And she knows herself enough to know that she goes there and then she stops. She would totally be okay with me sharing that with you. She would also probably say it about herself. But there is this piece where it's like, we can go in a feedback loop, right? That is not helpful either.
Oh.
And change, like from a neuroscience standpoint, I also just heard this recently, more in like kind of the health and fitness, but it is neuroscience related and applies, is like change happens in loops, not leaps. And I was like, ooh, I fucking love that shit too. Is like the idea that like we think that it's the straight line trajectory, right? Like
No, it's
totally, and it is the loop, right? We do need to do the loop. And right, I oftentimes will have conversations with my friends where I'll be like, I'm dealing with this thing and we're gonna talk about it 45 more times before it changes for me. They're like, oh yeah, okay, right? Whereas like I've had other relationships where like, are we really fucking talking about this again? And it's like, yes, I'm still on this shit because I haven't processed through it, right? Like, because I'm still in the loop. Yeah. And sometimes the loop is a mile long and sometimes the loop is just me spinning like a dervish, like in one spot over and over again, right? And it's the figuring out like, because situations in general, kind of like circling back to where we started of like, you can get feedback in more ways than just conversation. Right?
Oh yeah. Like
so the lack of conversation, the rejection of like leaning into an invitation, the facial expressions, you know, like all of that is feedback, body language, the way somebody looks at you or doesn't look at you or responds to you or doesn't respond to you, and then the words and the tone that they use, right? Like, you know, there's days when I'm a little harsher and days where I'm a little more jokey, right? That is giving feedback to other people, and I also receive that too. And so I think it's, you can be in the loop for a long time based on all the feedback we can receive, because this is a very lengthy situation. So we have to figure out at some point what is none of our business, what does not resonate, and figure out where the line is between development and an echo chamber. And I think that is a really hard place for people to figure out. And I, of course, do not have the answer because I only have questions, right? Like, how do I know that I'm only creating a circle that just reinforces my ideas versus is giving me feedback and is sharpening, right? Like, am I only moving into spaces that are giving me feedback that validates everything I'm already doing? Well, then I'm not going to develop. And also, I'm going to turn into an asshole. So, I mean, like, our whole country is built on, like, people doing asshole shit like that. I shouldn't say our whole country. I would say the people that are fucking in charge of shit, not to be political, but but they live in echo chambers where we just, like, validate the shit out of things, right? Like, it is really wild of just this idea of, like, do we just feel safe in the echo chamber and then we're never going to develop? I'm like, then we're going to be in the fucking dark ages, like medieval dark ages where like nothing, no new ideas. Anyway, but it's a whole nother history repeating itself. But if people are just like nodding and like, yeah, like that totally resonates with me. And you're kind of like, how does that resonate? Like, give me some specifics, or are you just telling me what I want to hear? And I think that kind of helps, is like, are you being mindful of like, like, what do you think about this? Or are you just like shouting your shit and letting people validate you all the time?
Right. I was just going to ask you, like, what questions, and it just sounds like we should be questioning it at all times. Like, just like.
Not at all times, because that'll fuck you up too.
Sure.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if I only have questions,
Yeah,
I'm for sure a more anxious person than I already am. Just putting that out there.
For sure. Okay, so I mean, but it sounds like.
I think like
just self-checking.
Mindful, intentional questions. Like, if you're just questioning and questioning because you're down the fucking rabbit hole, like, which we all know how that movie ended, right? Her mom woke her up, right? We're talking about Alice in Wonderland, just for those that didn't catch on to that. Like, but like, reality is what? So in psychology, there's also this term called phenomenology. It's in a lot philosophy and theology, but in Adlerian psychology, it's this idea that we're studying phenomenon, right? Ology, the study of phenomenon, right? Yeah. And so there's like, sure, the idea of reality, but really reality is shaped based on what people think. Like, you and I are having the same experience right now, but we're very much not having the same experience, right? That's how your questions are coming. Like, you're sitting over there, I'm sitting over here. I'm speaking, you're hearing, or you're speaking, I'm hearing. So it's like, even in the same reality, like, different phenomena are being created. And so I think when you think in the context of a relationship, you have to think about, like, what is the phenomenon that is being created for me? What's the story I make up in my head versus what is actually happening? Are they making up a story in their head versus what is happening? How do we kind of come to the middle of, like, what is maybe the joint reality? Versus, like,
your shared reality.
Yeah, that's a little fucked up to say. Maybe a little too meta. But you know, I think there is that piece of, like, perception's 9/10 of the law, right?
Yeah. And we're kind of built on filling the gaps, right? Like, we're
terrible at that, though.
Our very, our primate brain is just like, okay, we have this information, now we gotta just fill in the,
We're terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I'll send an email to my staff, and then I'll get like 2 emails back or a text message. It's not as bad as it used to be, but it used to be like, are you mad at me? Am I getting fired? What's happening? And I'm like, no, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, and luckily, like, people that have worked for me for so long, like, at this point, they're like, no, that's just Megan. She's just very direct, right? But that's what I know about myself. And so because I know that about myself, I am able to also give, like, that feedback of, like, to my team, hey, I'm really direct. I will say, at home in my relationship, I have to, like, yesterday I went home after a hard day and I was like, I'm emotional. And my husband was like, oh, okay, do you want a hug? Yes, I want a hug, right? But because I land more in the direct space often, like, I know that it is harder for people when I am emotional. They're kind of like, what the fuck do I do with that? And because I often am, like, processing emotion internally, because I do know, again, things that I know about myself. Like, when I do share outwardly, I think people feel uncomfortable, like, oh, she's real fucked up right now. And it's like, no, I'm just having a big emotion. That's okay. And I can have it. And like, you need to trust that I can handle it. Like, and that also is an invitation of, like, do you trust in this space that I can do this? And if you don't, then I can't share that with you. And I find other people I can share that with.
Well, and your directness is also that, giving that permission. You're saying, hey, I'm emotional. And if you're saying that in front of somebody you trust, and that's a part of it.
Totally. One of my therapists last week joked, and they were like, do you really cry, Megan? I was like, LOL. Yes, I do. Just not in front of everybody.
Only when she's winning awards.
I mean, well, fair. That did happen. I was like, that's because you all surprised me. Hey, listen, as the assistant producer back there is, like, laughing. But I think, like, at the end of the day, how do you know yourself? How do you know who you are? How do you decide who gets to participate in that? And, like, it goes back to conversations we're having about kind and firm, about conversations we're having about how do you pick the right therapist? If you do want to go to therapy, if you want to coach, like who are you drawn to? Are you drawn to somebody that what they're saying or speaking into is challenging you, but in a way that resonates with you? Or are you drawn to people that are saying the same things that you find yourself always saying? Or are you like, are you in a space that is going to make you more of who you are? Or, right, it's kind of one of those things of like, are you going to like shed the layers for summer, or are you going to like pack it on for winter, right? Like, are you going to hide yourself under more stuff that other people give you, or are you going to reveal more of who you are?
Right. Well, and that's why I love having conversations with you too, is because you aren't just placating me. You are challenging me, and to be honest, sometimes it can be a little exhausting, but also it's
always exhausting.
But it's as I reflect on it, like it's good. It's good for me. It's good to
correct. And also like knowing that you can always be like, Megan, can we just like not with that today?
Well, yeah.
Like, I think those are those pieces of like, feedback doesn't have to be happening all the time.
No.
And it should be happening sometime. And
yes.
yes, feedback does happen all the time in all the ways and spaces. And so what do you open yourself to?
Yeah, you get to choose. When you want to.
If you know yourself, you get to choose. And I think that's the caveat. If you don't know yourself, anyone and everyone will speak into who you are.
Right.
And so if you find yourself being like, I believe this crappy thing that this person is saying to me, or this or that, like, I don't feel challenged. I just feel like, oh, I guess I am. Oh, I guess that's what they think about me.
Well, so yeah, you're let's say giving up because you don't have.
Or you're just like, sure, I guess I'll be that thing for them.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and there's places for that too. Not healthy places, but you know, there's places for that.
Not...
All things are like neutral.
Yeah.
You know, do better when you know better.
Yeah.
A
lot of
weird quippy shit.
A lot of one-liners
that
today.
I'm not claiming as my own. Caveat: somebody has said it better before me.
But we're gonna make a T-shirt out of it.
Or a fucking fortune cookie. I feel like it's a lot of weird fortune cookie shit. Is basically the gist. But yeah, if you take anything from today, figure out what feedback you're getting, what feedback you're accepting, and what feedback you want. And then ask for it.
I think that's...
Like, ask for it.
That's all great questions.
Right?
And all great just mindsets to be in.
And then just forget about all the other shit.
Well, yeah, because we can get spun up about all the other shit and not have to...
Well, and then the only person that's struggling with it is you, right? Like, I think that's the piece, too, that, like, I regularly have to remind myself, and also probably how I close my own circle of my rage texting you. We're gonna fucking talk about feedback next podcast, right?
I'm like, okay.
Is like, right? It's that piece of like, I'm the only one suffering the big emotion, or I'm the only one who has a process that I need to go through if I'm being overwhelmed by this thing, or I'm not, right? Because I'm not in control of the other person. So like there kind of another piece of that is it is privileged to give feedback, and I am in my own space of like needing to acknowledge like it is a privilege for me to offer somebody that feedback, and I can't control whether they take it or not.
Yeah.
So the other side of kind of takeaway of like, if you are giving feedback, do you know that they want it? Does it even matter? Right? And those are things I've been thinking about this week of like, yeah, I could give feedback. I got a lot of fucking feedback. I can tell everybody everything I feel about anything I want, right? If you're an Enneagram person, I'm an Enneagram 8, and I for sure think I have a lot of shit to say. Clearly why we have a podcast about it. Like, you know, and I will still, probably for decades to go, have shit to say. That doesn't mean that people care about it or need it or should change based on it, right? Yeah. My hope is that those that are drawn and want it will receive it, which is why it's great to just like put it out there, and then who wants to consume it can consume it. Trolls or not, I could care less, right? Like, and I think there's a piece of like, who and how do I give feedback to, and like what is worth pouring into? Because it is also tiring to give it.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not in control of other people either, even though I want to be sometimes. Some days. On a regular Tuesday, I might want to be. I'll own my shit. So, but yeah, feedback. It'll fuck you up. feels like the end. If you made it to the end of this podcast, thanks for listening. As always, if this episode brought up anything that you'd like to delve into deeper on a one-on-one basis or any kind of mental health crisis that you might be going through, please see the show notes for resources and references as well. Thanks.